Okay, now with Mike there, let's go ahead and we'll get this regular meeting of the MCAG Governing Board, Merced County Association of Governments, Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County, and Merced County Regional Waste Authority Management. It's Thursday, April 16th, 2020 at 3 o'clock. If we could go ahead and move to item number 1, our roll call.
Director Aguilar, Director Creighton,
Here.
Director Espinoza, Director Hoag,
Here.
Director Lohr,
Here.
Director Murphy, Director Murphy, Director Oliveira, Director Pereira,
Here.
Director Silvera,
Here.
Director Vialta,
Here.
Chair McDaniel.
Present as well, and I know I heard Jim and Mike on there.
I'm here. I'm not sure if I'm unmuted, but it's Mike Murphy.
Got you, Mike. Heard
Thank
you.
you, Director Murphy.
How
Director,
about
me, Espinoza?
Director Espinoza, thank you. And Director Oliveira,
he was on here earlier.
thank you.
Here.
There he is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There you
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll go ahead and move to item number 2. This is an action item.
Mr. Chair, Director Silvera, motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Director Pereira, second.
Thank you. So I have a first and a second. Can we call for the vote?
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director Lohr,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Oliveira,
Yes.
Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta,
Yes. Okay, motion passes unanimously. And I'd like to state now for the record that we did not receive any public comments in the time that we asked for it. So I will be moving on through the meeting without asking for public comment. So at this time, from number 3, we'll go ahead and move to item number 4, which is the minutes, A, B, and C. This is an action item.
Laura, move to approve.
Thank you.
Pereira, second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Can we call for the vote, please?
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director Lohr,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Oliveira,
Yes.
Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 5, Citizens Advisory Committee Report, information only. Gina Cooey.
Hi, thank you very much. So on April 3rd, we had a meeting. We had just 6 people there, so there was no quorum. We did get reports, so the state transit assistance, second quarter distribution and good repair, second allocation distribution, and the congestion mitigation air quality policy update and call for projects. And we received the information. I'm not sure if you have this. You may have all these things, but in case you don't, there are just 3 more. Transit Joint Power Authority for Merced County monthly update. We also got information on the transportation planning, Measure V, and on MCAG newsletter for March 2020. I'd also like to state, I represent agriculture, and I'm also the president of the special district with Merced County, the East Merced RCD, and I just found out today that there were 2 awarded, I believe in California, I think it's $10 million total. The American Farmland Trust has gotten an NRCS, that's a Natural Resource Conservation Service. Our East Merced RCD will receive $49,000 grant, so that's great news. AFT is the American Farmland Trust, the same organization that did a study that I gave you last month. You had it online, and I also have hard copies whenever that's possible to hand out. So that's it.
Thank you, Jean, very much. Were there any questions from any of the directors for advisory? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into Merced County Association of Governments. We'll move to item number 6, which is our Caltrans report. This is information. Dan McElhaney or Tom Dumas?
This is Dan McElhaney, District 10 Director. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Dan, we can hear you great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Thank you for having us part of the agenda today. And Tom's also on the line with me. And we, first of all, just want to thank everybody for being COVID-19 safe. As you see out on the highways, Caltrans maintenance and Caltrans construction are part of the federal and state essential services for transportation, serving goods and supply movements and medical supply movements. Also at the federal level, state level, there's been restrictions lifted on trucking hours, and so there's a lot more truck movement, as you know, and there's also a lot less traffic. So Caltrans has over 500 active projects statewide. We've accelerated about 116 of those by allowing, longer work windows, daytime instead of nighttime work, to try to complete some of those projects and take the opportunity of safer work zones, less traffic. Most of the construction industry is still working with some new COVID-19 safety measures in place, and are continuing. And as we move to, in case of infrastructure and economy rebuilding opportunities, we look forward to working with MCAG in Merced County and working across the state in support of rebuilding the economy as we transition out of this crisis. Caltrans ourselves, we have a high percentage of teleworking out of our office staff, but maintenance and construction are also very much engaged, from the snow country to the valley to incident management and support of CHP and so forth. So my hat's off to our Caltrans maintenance and construction teams for helping in their public service. You'll see our COVID-19 preparedness messaging on our changeable message signs, as well as messages regarding park closures recently. Another big factor for us is there's a much higher speed levels on many of our routes. So we do ask everybody to slow for the cone zone and stay under the speed limit in cooperation with all of us to remain safe out there. And we will have some safety messages out by the end of the month, and as well as our COVID-19 messages on our changeable message signs as part of our outreach campaign for driver safety. A few more things. There's quite a bit of construction work planned. There's a full on-ramp closure at East Atwater Overhead to the southbound 99 beginning this week and through tomorrow. There's a number of ramp closures in support of the East Atwater Overhead work over the next few weeks. Full closures and partial closures. Usually, these are still planned from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. But thank you for your patience if you have to detour around those. And some of those delays are only temporary, short term. Some of those may be a few hours of closure. Recent CTC guidelines came out, an SB1 and Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, Local Partnership Program guidelines to cover 3 years of the next planning efforts. And the California Transportation Plan 2050 schedule is still working towards an admin draft this spring and early summer for a final plan this winter. The next California Transportation Commission meeting is in May, And we're certainly going to be looking forward to how the decrease in revenues maps out with all of our programs. Another item at the May or June CTC meeting, I know many of you know about the Ferguson slide on Route 140. As a district, we're leading the project back to programming of about $230 million request over the next few years to build the rock shed of the Ferguson slide, which is in Mariposa County, about 10 miles from the park. But I just thought to give you a heads up that we'll be back out in construction approval this summer to remove about 80,000 yards of rock, and then hopefully by late next year get another approval to build the rock shed, which is 700 feet long in the slide area. Just a quick update there, and I'll wrap up there, Mr. Chair. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Mr. McElhaney. I'm kind of sharing a Chris Farley meme. I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of my constituency has shared it with me. But it says, "For the love of God, do all the road construction now." So there's been a little bit of humor out there.
And that's our statewide focus, yes. And it's a benefit in the safety work zone as well as an opportunity to efficiently get things done. Thank you.
Very well. Is there any questions for Mr. McElhaney? Seeing none, thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, and thank you to Stacy and her team for their partnership. Thank you.
So now we'll go ahead and move on to 7. This is information and discussion only. Were there any questions, or anybody have any questions after they read it in their packet? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 8, consent agenda. This is an action item. What is the pleasure of the board?
Laura, move to approve.
Thank you.
Second, Espinoza.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Can we call for the vote?
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinosa,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director Lohr,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Oliveira, Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 9, transportation planning and Measure V update, information only. Mr. Matt Fell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple updates. I think you already got the email from Stacy that the STIP was approved. California Transportation Commission did approve our STIP submission, so that's very good news. And then just, I'm sure as everybody's starting to think about the economic impacts to your budgets and so forth, which are going to be pretty extensive, I imagine. In the transportation business, there's a variety of funding sources that people are already looking and forecasting. There's going to be some drops, and they will vary depending on the funding source, but there's certainly going to be some declines in revenue. So, we're going to watch that situation carefully, just to let you know that we're thinking about that. And then on the federal SAFE rule, that's the thing about the fuel economy standards and so forth nationwide. So there were 2 pieces to that, and the first part got issued some time ago, and California basically just figured out how to deal with that situation. But then SAFE rule part 2 is being published, so we'll have to figure out how to deal with that. So that will take some time. In fact, that'll be more difficult for the state to deal with, but we will keep you updated on that. And that's all I had. And if you had any questions, I could answer those.
Thank you very much, Matt. Are there any questions for Matt at this time? Okay, Matt, let's go ahead and move to item 10. Congestion mitigation, air quality, CMAC policy update, and call for projects.
Okay, thank you. And I think Mary Michael might be sharing a slide that I have to kind of summarize this item. So let me know when that.
We have it up.
Okay, great, thank you. So congestion mitigation, air quality, this is federal funding, and MCAG board decides how this funding is spent, and we get about $3.5 million a year. And we typically have about a 4-year program that we work with at a time. And, you know, there are CMAQ projects that are underway. All of your jurisdictions, you know, are working hard on delivering those CMAQ projects. Right now, the program is mostly a mixture of some transit ride sharing promotion. There's a lot of sidewalk and bike path projects. There's a few traffic flow improvements. And there's a couple of projects to pave unpaved roads because there is an air quality benefit to that. All of these projects have to have an air quality benefit. That's the purpose of this funding. And so what we are proposing to do is issue a call for projects because there is about $3 million available in the next fiscal year, federal fiscal year. So that money would be available starting October 1st. And we're proposing to release applications if the board approves the call for projects, and then those would be due at the beginning of June. The CMAQ subcommittee would evaluate them in June, and then they would come back to you for action in July, the committee's recommendation. And along with this, we're proposing some policy updates, and the purpose of these updates is basically to keep the CMAQ money flowing and to make sure that we are keeping the dollars, you know, regionally, that we don't lose any of the funding. So CMAQ is funding we get from the feds, and they expect that, you know, to go to projects. So if we don't keep that money going, then we could lose some of it. And so the policy updates include a few things. A couple of them are about paving projects. So we're proposing that paving projects have a minimum usage threshold, you know, make sure that there are at least a minimum amount of traffic using the facility. And then also a $1 million cap on paving projects. We don't know how many applications there would be, but we're proposing that there be a cap and that there be a scoring adjustment. And the reason for that is because these projects tend to score very highly. But again, if there's only a relatively low amount of vehicles using the facility, then the overall public benefit, apart from the air quality benefit, may not be comparable to some of the other types of projects. And then there's some things about sequential programming. That's basically, we would like to see NEPA approvals and any of those sorts of things get acquired before programming subsequent phases. And then on the flip side of that, if a project is ready, you know, if they get all their approvals and they're ready to go to construction and there's capacity available, they could be advanced. You know, we have a mechanism where we can advance projects when they're ready. And then just lastly, something about deobligation. If a project doesn't make progress per Caltrans and federal rules, and if the federal government deobligates the project, which we haven't had that happen, but then any subsequent programming wouldn't would be deleted from the program. And that's basically what we're proposing, and we are requesting the board adopt the updated policies and procedures and direct staff to release a call for projects. And if you have any questions, then I could answer those. There are quite a few details in there, so you know, you may have questions about any of that.
Thank you, Matt. This is an action item. Does anybody have any questions for Matt at this time? Okay, what is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second, Laura.
Second was Laura. Who was the first?
Atwater.
Okay, so I have a first and a second. Call for the vote, please.
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director Lohr,
Yes.
Director Olivera,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta,
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Moving right along, we'll go to item number 11, approve the proposed 2020-21 overall work program and budget. This is an action item. Nav Bragi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the Transportation Planning Department's proposed budget for 2021. This is, nothing has changed from our draft budget. We are still proposing one new position for the Planning Department. Our total revenue is about $3.4 million. Our major projects for fiscal year 2021 will be continuing to work on the FTIP. We will be releasing we will be starting the West Sider commuter bus study this year. We also be releasing two of the remaining three planning studies this year. We'll be releasing an RFP, and hopefully we'll get them awarded by end of this calendar year and have all these 4 studies concluded in the fiscal year 2021. We'll be continuing to work on Measure V admin, implementing planning plan and updates, work on the annual audits and reports. Also, we'll begin working on the planning for 2022 RTP. This slide shows our revenue funding sources. Our revenue increases by $201,000. Majority of our funding will be coming from our FHWA. We'll be reducing our LTF by $41,000. This slide demonstrates our expenditures. The increase is due to basically the forced transit studies, legal services, and janitorial services. Let me remind this body, none of this funding is affected by COVID-19. Most of the money is allocated by the feds, FHWA, and FTA. So does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Nav. Is there any questions for Nav at this time? This is an action item. Seeing no questions, I'll be looking for a motion.
Lower, move to approve.
Thank you.
Second, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. I have a first and a second. Can we call for the vote, please?
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director Lohr,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Olivera,
Yes.
Director Pereira, Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta,
Yes. Thank you. Is Director Pereira available to vote? If not,
He's on the call.
Yeah, I voted yes.
thank you.
okay, motion passes. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 12, authorize West Side commuter bus study contract. This is an action item. Mr. Fell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have this in the budget for $100,000 to do a West Side commuter bus study to look at the potential for long distance express or commuter bus service, mainly from Los Banos over to San Jose area, but potentially also, like for example, from Gustine up to the East Bay. And we did release a request for proposals. We got 4 proposals, and you can see the evaluation scores in the staff report. And the evaluators did select Fair and Peers as the highest score based on their experience with similar projects and their innovative approach. They have a really interesting high-tech big data approach, and they're going to be doing a lot of outreach as well. And they have some innovative outreach tools that they'll use, which I think are actually deployable even in the current situation to some extent. So anyway, they do have a very innovative proposal, and we are requesting authorization for the director to enter into contract for this study in an amount not to exceed $100,000. And if you have any questions, I can answer those.
Thank you, Matt, very much. And I'd also like to say I want to thank Director Villalta for his push on this continuous support of it. And are there any questions for Matt?
Motion to approve, Atwater.
Second,
Los Banos.
I have a first and a second. Can we call for the vote, please?
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director Lohr,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Oliveira,
Yes.
Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving right along to item number 13, 2020 Ana Fuentes Scholarship. This is an action item. Mary Michael Rawling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's that time of year again when we are able to award a $1,000 scholarship to a high school senior of a Merced County high school. This individual was selected by a subcommittee consisting of a few of our MCAG staff, a member of the Fuentes family, and Director Hoag as a representative from your board. Ms. Harleen Thandy has been selected. Her credentials are on the screen for you, and she appears to be a very bright spot from the community of Livingston. So we're happy to bring this proposal to you today to and we recommend the $1,000 scholarship be awarded to Harleen Thandy for this year, and then she would be eligible for an additional 3 years should she maintain the minimum requirements for the award.
Thank you, Mary Michael. And I'd like to thank Director Hoag for participating in this. Are there any questions regarding this item?
Being from Livingston, if there's no other questions or comments, I'd like to make a motion for it.
Very good. Thank you.
I second it.
I have a first and a second. Can we call for the vote?
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director Lohr,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Oliveira,
Yes.
Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving into the Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County. Item number 14. Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County monthly update information. Christine Chavez.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am sharing my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon. I wanted to give you guys an update on the ridership. This is what our ridership looked like for the month of March. And as you guys are aware, the stay-at-home order was issued on March 19th. So we saw a pretty gradual decrease in our ridership. And you may recall from months past that we have been on the increase, or our ridership has been increasing month over month. So that's why you're seeing such a small decrease in ridership, close to 26%. And then paratransit dropped a little earlier, but we still saw about the same drop in ridership percentage-wise. As far as the operations and maintenance is going, we are still well underway for our turnover expected to be May 1. At the beginning of the month of April, we commenced the maintenance inspections for our fleet, and that is to ensure that the fleet we receive is in a safe and operable condition. And it's just kind of a snapshot of where we are with our fleet maintenance once we turn it over to a new contractor. We have, our First Transit is in the process of hiring and training all of our operators to ensure that there's a seamless transition on May 1. Staff at TJPA is working closely with First Transit staff to make sure that the details of service are clearly spelled out in the expectations. And staff is working with National Express to ensure there's a full closeout of the contractual obligations. And then an update on COVID-19 effect on operations. In late February, we started the sanitation of the vehicles. They're sanitized regularly, but we just ramped it up to ensure that high-touch surfaces were cleaned. We started releasing a number of public service announcements encouraging proper hygiene, social distancing, and essential travel. Earlier this month, we received allocation amounts for the CARES Act funding, and we did a pretty thorough evaluation of revenues and ridership to determine what our next steps would be, whether it's cutting service or reducing or suspending fare collection. And on April 10th, we suspended the fare collection on board all of our systems, so fixed route, paratransit, and dial-a-ride. And we've continued the message of using the buses only for essential travel. So these are just some of the statistics that we use to help analyze some of the decisions that we were making. We saw pretty significant drops in our revenues. If you're looking at the month of April, it's close to 82%. That includes 4 days of the free fare. And our ridership has dropped about 70% given the first 2 weeks in April, or the first week and a half. And the service reduction strategy that we've established is a bit of a 5-level reduction. We're currently somewhere between level 1 and level 2. The reduction that we've seen has come from the UC Merced sponsored route. We've reduced that to be partial because they don't have a lot of students in class. And in the case that we have a number of sick operators or issues that may arise that will prevent us from providing service, these are the levels at which service would be reduced. And all of those details are spelled out in the staff report in your packet. So here's just a couple of graphs of what our ridership looks like. It was about 10% higher than it had been in 2019. And so we're seeing that pretty dramatic drop, which is a good indication that people are staying home and following the state mandates. But we do, as an essential service, continue to provide service for essential workers and essential daily needs for people that ride the bus or do not have alternative transportation. So here's just another table on the ridership and how that looks in various graphs. And overall, we're close to 70% drop in ridership. And these are some of the collateral pieces that we've pushed out on social media, on our website, and various subscriptions that people have. With that, I'll take any questions that you guys may have on TJPA items.
Thank you very much, Christine. That was an information item. Are there any questions for Christine at this time? Okay, thank you, Christine, very much. We'll move on to item number 15, with an update on the Transit Joint Powers Authority for said county for 2020 and 21 draft budget. Again, Nav, you have the floor.
This is unprecedented times. I spoke to all our colleagues up and down the valley, and they're facing the same challenges we are. Staff has started the process of drafting a budget prior to the pandemic. However, staff recognized that prepare of the draft was no longer accurate budget document for the TJPA, as several funding sources will be affected by this current pandemic. As such, rather than providing a draft budget, staff has prepared a summary of how the pandemic is impacting the TJPA budget for fiscal year 2021. So 65% of our TJPA annual budget comes from funding sources like to be significantly impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. LTF, which is derived from the quarter cents general sales tax. it makes up 40% of our total operating revenue budget for TJPA. SCA is generated by the sales tax on diesel fuel. That makes up 18% of our total operating budget. And then our fare box, which makes up which is comprised of fares collected on the buses, makes up about 10% of our total budget. This is a slide of what our pre-COVID budget was going to be. The highlighted items are items that are going to be impacted by the COVID-19. I've highlighted UC revenues because we don't know if they are going to go online or have students attend school. And what it looks like and what we're hearing is they're leaning towards next semester students to be going online. And if that's the case, we won't be receiving the $380,000 from UC Merced. What are the next steps? CARES Act funding 2020. $2.3 billion was distributed by FERMLEC to 5307. Our current allocation at 5307 is $3.4 million. The CARES Act estimate allocation for TJPA is $9 million. $87 million has been allocated under the 5311. Our current allocation is $539,000. Under the CARES Act, the allocation will be $590,000. So let me restate this. This is on top of our current allocation. So if we get $539,000, we'll be getting additional $590,000 under the 5311, and on the 5307, we'll be getting $3.4 million on top of them. On top of that, we'll be getting $9 million. So we will be bringing a draft item budget next month to this board, reflecting the funding utilization of the CARES Act and our projections of how much LTF, STA, and our fare box will be dropping next year. So on that note, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Nav. Are there any questions for Nav regarding that? Okay, Nav, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and go to item number 16, Low Carbon Transit Operation Program. Allocation request. This is an action item. Christine.
Good afternoon. This is a direct allocation that we received from Caltrans, funded through the California Air Resources Board Cap and Trade Program. This was mentioned in the item last month where you guys approved the purchase of some of our fleet replacement. And so this $500,000 would offset the total cost. The $541,000 would offset the total cost of the replacement of those vehicles.
Okay, thank you very much. It's item 16, and it is an action item. Are there any questions for Christine? What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve. Joe.
Second, Lauren.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Is this just for item A, or is this for A and B together?
This would be for A and B. Item B is a formality, and it's authorizing our Executive Director, Stacy, as the authorized agent to sign the grant documents.
Okay, very good. Let's call for the vote.
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Hogue,
Yes.
Director Moore,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Oliveira,
Yes.
Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Now we'll move on to Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority. Item number 17, Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority monthly update, information only. Eric Zetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, board members.
So I've got a lot of items here. I'm going to try to move quickly. Item 17, which is on page 133 of your packet, is where I'll begin. And so this is an oral update. I'm going to give you an update on the March tonnage reports. I'll give you an update to the COVID-19 impacts to not only the solid waste industry, but also to RWA. We'll talk about the community cleanup events and the HHW events, give you an update on the mattress recycle grant, and then give you an update also on Senate Bill 1383. So for our March tonnage reports, we have seen the highest total of tonnages that we've seen for both landfills. We saw at the Highway 59 landfill a 9% increase in tonnages from the months of March 2019 to the months of March 2020. We also saw a 24% increase at Billy Wright landfill. This 15,824 tons received in the month of March 2020 is the highest in the period of the 5 years going back to 2016 for the month of March. Quite historic. So between the two of them, we've received a 14% increase for the month of March. I will asterisk and kind of put a disclaimer here to this, that in the last 2 weeks, we have seen both sites, due to COVID-19 and due to some of the social distancing going on, we have seen some drops to this number. So I do anticipate that at our next meeting, we'll go over more of what those numbers are. But for the month of March, we have good numbers. Speaking of COVID-19, this is the solid waste and COVID-19. This is the heat map that Johns Hopkins University had reported on April 6, 2020 of reported cases. And some of the impacts in the solid waste industry are, we're seeing less self-hauls. There are jurisdictions around the country that are dropping cash customers from their sales and not permitting the public to use their scales. That is not the case at RWA, but it is going around the nation. Some are not accepting cash and going to electronic transactions only, and so that is impacting some of the facilities. We're seeing in solid waste, there's a move to have joint collection, where we're seeing some trucks will pick up both MSW along with recyclables. MSW standing for municipal solid waste, and so we are seeing that occur. Between the two, we're seeing reduced tonnages, where we're seeing as commercial businesses are no longer open due to COVID-19, their waste has dramatically dropped. There's been a move for jurisdictions and municipalities to stop bulky waste cleanup collections, which has occurred in Merced County. And then over time, wages have increased. So in staffing challenges to sites, as different equipment operators and maintenance workers do succumb to COVID-19, then it becomes a case at which others have to step up and work their position. So either that be an out of class or an overtime type assignment. We've seen that in the industry. The material recycling facilities, or MRFs as they're acronymed, many have been closing up and down the state of California and the nation. Regardless of their automation or hand sorting balance, we're seeing the same closures occur. Many of these facilities have the ability to increase their personal protective equipment, or PPE. But the challenge for them, the real challenge, is that they're trying to keep their employees safe. And in doing so, they can't perform the sorting activities while keeping the 6 feet of separation from employee to employee. So we're seeing many of those close. This in turn leads to less recyclables around the industry, as most recycling centers are closed off. This is the solid waste impact from COVID-19. This is a fluid item that changes daily. Just this morning, I was on calls with individuals that with new information. And so what you see in the last bullet here, recyclables transportation, if we were in the Port of Oakland, a place where you would get 10 to 20 shipping ships in their Oakland port in a given week, they're now seeing 2. They're basically a ghost town in the LA port as well, where our folks that are in the LA ports are seeing that there's less shipping. So, and how that relates to solid waste is that if you have recyclables that you're trying to ship out to China, you really don't have the ships to move them. So that's how that translates. Now, as we look at the Regional Waste Authority, some of the impacts, obviously, that we felt here in Merced County has been that, one, with the community cleanups being canceled, we have not seen that material in bulk, but rather we are seeing it increase now on the public side. And so we have seen an increase to the public using our scales. Just as that has come up, we've also had private haulers that have come into us and said that, you know, they have projects, they have jobs, and the jobs and projects are not paying as quickly as they once were. And so they're asking for credit increases, which we're doing and following as we have in the past. And so we're helping out as much as we can with that. The essential workers are working. So we do have essential workers working the sites. We have one of the items that we have before you today, in item 18, we are working with individuals to come out and clean the sites to make sure that they're disinfected and that the safety of our employees is at the highest level. The office is closed, obviously, at Highway 59, but the staff that is there at both the scale house are there, as well as the site staff at the landfills. Personal protective equipment have been limited in supplies. We've been able, through the help of others, in getting this to our employees, but again, it's a challenge, as I'm sure all of you know. And then employee safety. We are working this week and getting some options together to make more safety options available for our employees as it relates to testing. So essential services, I do want to reiterate that the Billy Wright landfill and the scales are open Monday through Saturday, and as well as Highway 59 landfill and scales, both are open. We've made this available on social media, and so that's been good. This right here is one of the impacts that just came a couple hours ago. I was just informed of this, and I've sent this to the executive director. This comes out of East Bay Times, but the East Bay is appealing for emergency state funds for trash and recycling impacts related to COVID-19. As the shelter in place has happened, it is required, you know, the collection of material is a health code safety option. And so with that mandate, which requires a once-a-week pickup, many are now petitioning the federal government or the state government to get emergency funds to help in that effort. The call that I was on this morning was the Solid Waste Association of North America. David Biederman, he was telling us that he had put a letter forward to FEMA, and he was actively working with FEMA to work out some options for those in the solid waste industry, opening up Category B funding that would help businesses or rather municipalities where businesses have closed, brought on by COVID-19, and to try to help with those industries, both public and private, that are struggling through this time. And so we're waiting to see the outcome of that. One of the meetings that I did have right before the TRB, which I did share, these same slides with the TRB, was no one has ever seen a COVID-19 impact as we are all faced with this right now. Some of the assumptions in the industry is that this will be a short-lived pandemic, and that they're hopeful that we will be back to normal by midsummer. Now, this was a presentation given less than 2 weeks ago, and as we sit here today, many of us know that that may not be the case. The feeling before the COVID-19 was that consumers were cautious, but there was this pent-up need to want to spend. And one of the things that they pointed out was to watch housing starts. And that if we looked at the last economic crisis and we followed the housing starts, we would realize that the housing starts started to drop pretty significantly before the 2008-2009 economic woe. And so, and then when it began to pick up, so did the economy. And so the industry is looking at housing to kind of help us support when we will be back in business. For commercial businesses, it is important to note that commercial businesses generally, when they do have an economic woe, there's pressure for bank lending and loans and customers and goods and services and costs that make it to where some of those commercial businesses never come back. Below, you'll see a list of establishments in US and Canada that have one or more employee. And so that's the numbers that they were going off of. So with that, the business outlook for the solid waste industry, and this is industry-wide, for the first quarter, when we talk quarters, the first quarter is January through March, we didn't see, some of what COVID-19. It was messy, but there wasn't a disaster at that point in the first quarter of 2020. Some of the early signs of what was going to decline, we began to see commercial and small container in solid waste was declining, as well as volumes in tonnages to landfills. In the second half of the quarter, so this would be now February, March, there's shock and awe because COVID-19 has set in. Industries are expecting double-digit decline in tonnage volumes, both from commercial and small container services. The second half of the quarter of quarter two of 2020, which this now is April, June, we're looking at a steady return to normal, which they're expecting now between now and June. Every customer that went into service on hold and reopens has to have a trash service. And so we begin to start seeing some sort of normalcy to services at residents and at customers. And then by 2021, whatever you thought was happening in 2020 before COVID-19, repeat it in 2021, basically taking from what you learned and going forward. This slide here presents the picture of housing units started. And so the vertical gray lines within the bar graph are indicative of a recession. The blue band that you see is the industry recession as it goes up and down. Your red line is your total housing starts. And so as you look at this, what you end up seeing, and the blue line I should point out is the average. You're really dealing with a 1.5 month-to-month, 1.5 million homes is what you're looking at for starts. And this is not indicative of single-family residential versus a commercial or PUD type unit. So what we see, if you look at the graph to the right, you see December of 2009, you see that right before that 2009 December, all the way back to December of 2007, there was a straight, and it goes all the way to 2005, the industry had felt something. So hammers stopped hammering nails, and so the workers were not working beginning in 2005 all the way down dramatically to 2009. And as the industry began to pick up, this is what the solid waste industry is following. They're following the housing starts to see when that industry begins to pick up, then they can expect to have more tonnages and demand for their services. So if we look at housing starts, and this is the M&M is the month prior to the month ahead, so this would be from February to March. For March of 2020, housing starts have over the nation have reduced by 22.3%. And of that number, single-family residential unit starts are down 17.5%. Building permits are down 6.8%. Permits for single-family residential are down 12.5%. If we look by region, you will see that the West region is hit the hardest of this 22.3% by a negative or a reduction rather of 20.2%. And this comes to you from the source on the bottom right, www.briefing.com. So they're really looking at housing starts to come up with an option to tell us what the future is going to be with that. Community cleanup events. Merced County, obviously with the schools closing, they didn't have a place for us to take residents to take their material to, and so that impacted us. And so we have canceled the South Dos Palos in April, La Grande in April 11th, and then Franklin Beechwood April 25th. unfortunately. And so we still do have scheduled events in October and November, Dos Palos Y, McSwain, and Planada. And we will just wait to see if we're actually able to hold those. So just be aware of that. Mattress recycling. Here's a picture at Highway 59 that shows you the new structure that we were granted, and we got a state grant for it. And this is going to now house our mattresses. And then if you look over here at Billy Wright, this is the structure fully completed. The crews did a great job of getting both done on the same day. And this is a picture of the Billy Wright landfill's mattress recycling storage, granted storage container there. Senate Bill 1383 organics update. So we have had some progress as it relates to Senate Bill 1383. On February 19th, we had met, RWA staff had met with Monterey Regional Waste Management District. Tim Flanagan's the general manager over there. And when we met with him, we were made aware at that time of a unique opportunity where they had an anaerobic digester on their site that they were trying to offload. It takes 5,000 tons a year, and the Monterey site had taken, I don't know what their tonnage is at, but they needed larger capacity, and so they needed a larger unit, and they no longer use this unit. They haven't been for 2 years or more. So Tim and Marty and I, we met with each other, and we kind of discussed options. And in this meeting is where we were disclosed that this was something that could be an option. On March 10th, we met also with Bowles Farm and Derek Azevedo over there, and they were working with Bill Camarillo from Agroman. And we were made aware of an option to possibly include Bowles Farms, as they're pursuing a pilot project right now to take in food waste. And once they're permitted to do so and they come online, that may be an option for a commingled food waste and green waste recycling stop. So we're investigating that option right now. And then on March 26th, we met with Michael Gross from Zanker Recycling. Zanker has a lot of facilities up north in the San Jose area. They've just got the contract for Sacramento, and they are building a facility for Sacramento County up north. And so we had some discussions with them as well. Those discussions we gave to HF&H and also SES. And then on April 13th, we met with HF&H. And when we met with HF&H, we went over some planning steps, which I'll show you what we did. And basically discussed how the authority was going to, what our position was for complying with SB 1383 and helping and assisting the jurisdictions. And then what we envision will come is that in summer of 2020, we will have action plans given to us from HF&H that will go to the jurisdictions. The jurisdictions then will take that information and be able to use that for their purposes. And then fall of 2020, the authority then would have an action plan given to us that we can then take to you all, to the governing board, for approval on what option, what decision to do. The action planning process of 1383, the meeting that we just had with HF&H was the evaluate compliance option step. This is the step that all of the jurisdictions have had, and the authority was going to have and did have after the conclusion of all of the jurisdictions. The next step is to prepare a cost-benefit analysis, and that cost-benefit analysis is what is due next, which we'll get by the fall. We have asked that they try to possibly work to speed that up, and but we're cognizant of all of the different moving parts, and so the fall is what we're looking to now. And then the review and coordinate specific approaches, that will be between summer to fall, the decision that we bring to the board. Any questions on item number 17?
You got it, Eric. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Eric? This is an information item. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to item number 18, authorized contract with Infectious Materials Emergency Response Services. This is an action item. Eric Zetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for item number 18, this is you have in your packet, this would be page 135. What we ran it against is that we have the public using our site, and if we get into a position at which we have to do a site disinfection or an emergency response service, we want to have the ability and the authority to do that. And so what you see before you is a contract to authorize the director to into a contract for infectious materials for emergency response services. This contract is not to exceed $50,000. Here before you, you will see, and this is in your packet, just kind of the hourly price on their rate sheet. This quote summary here that you see before you is for them cleaning and disinfecting our office site after we were informed that one of our employees had succumbed to an illness, but we didn't know what the illness was. It was later ruled to be a non-COVID illness, but at the time we did not know. And so this is an example of some of the work that would happen. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any questions on item number 18? This is an action item, so what's the pleasure of the board?
Laura, move to approve.
I have a motion.
Second.
Is that Joe?
That's me.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Can we call for the vote, please?
Director Creighton,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director Lohr,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Oliveira,
Yes.
Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Yes.
Director Vialta,
Yes. I had it on mute.
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. We'll move on to 19, property investigation, Billy Wright landfill expansion. Eric, you're still on.
Thank you. So item 19. So staff has been working with a realtor, working with our engineering staff, Billy Wright expansion update. So we looked at the 200 acres to the west of Billy Wright. It's contiguous. However, it is zoned residential for that property. We can utilize the existing roadway access that we have now. And the good news with that site is that it's the 200 acres is the water is supplied by the San Luis Water District. If we use the same based on the 600 acres that we had to the north, we gained about 100 years, give or take, of airspace if we had bought that. As we look at this 200 acres, unofficially, we're looking at this being about 33 years of airspace that we gain for the full 200 acres, give or take. Now, what greatly changes that is the rate of disposal, whether or not in the summer we plan to come to the board to make a determination on importation, and so that could change this number. And then also 1383, we'll need to know what's required on the Billy Wright property. If the Billy Wright landfill is going to take in a high volume of food waste organics, then that could speak to the land that we're looking to purchase. And so the next steps that staff is seeking direction from the board is if we are to consider the 200 acre parcel, we would need an appraisal. And so the property that we're looking for appraisals on is highlighted here. This is in your packet. This would begin on page 154. But there in front of you is 20, 30, there's 40 acres that is there, and this is just to the west of the Billy Wright landfill. And then if you go to the west of that, this is 160 acres that is located there. Those are the parcels that we would be looking to, if the board so chooses, to get an appraisal for. And that
Thank you. Is that it, Eric? So what I'd like to do now is Mary Michael will be monitoring the raise the hand at the bottom of your screen. So to proceed, if we could use that for folks to speak.
Mr. Chair, I do have one Director Villalta has his hand raised.
Very good. Director Villalta, please
Yeah,
proceed.
you should have known that. The only question I have is this the best option in your opinion at the time for the 200 acres?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and depending upon our intake, it could last 33 years. You know, and that's for us. I think, you know, an extension of 33 years is very viable, and I like the idea, but I more like the idea that it's a site that will work because we have water. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So I'll wait and make the motion after everyone has had a chance to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Villalta. It is for direction, so I don't think you'll need to make a motion.
Okay.
Mary Michael, are there any other hands raised?
Yes, Director Silvera, then Director Lohr.
Thank you, Director Silvera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric, do we know are we too early in the stage, or do we know if the property owners are willing sellers?
Very good question. The property owners at this point do not know that we are the ones seeking them. The realtor we've worked with has done a very good job of trying to keep us secret. The challenge is that one of the property owners is also affiliated with the property, the 600 acres to the north. And so I would envision, the realtor has told us that in his conversations with these property owners that they have already said that they're holding out for residential development and they're not certain that they want to sell at this point. And that was only through initial conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Silvera. Director Lohr?
Thank you. Just a question on timing. Is this the right time for us, considering the current activities?
Right. I think that we don't lose anything by exploring an appraisal. For timing, when we come back and the board is faced with having to make a decision, I think timing will play a factor at that time. And so the next board meeting, we will have real numbers for what's transpired here in the month of April, together with hopefully updates and options for 1383 on what we're looking for as it relates to the material to come in. And so I think the timing is fine. I guess when we actually put it to the board for a decision on whether or not to act on it, maybe timing would be more critical of a component at that time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could, this is Stacy. The other part that plays in terms of timing is that the board will be taking a look at our existing importation agreements that have been in place for a few years. Those will be part of the board's discussion here in the next couple of months, largely over the summer. So it was our goal to have these expansion options in terms of airspace that would be added with these parcels in advance of that decision. So that potential could be taken into the equation when determining how to proceed on importation.
Thank you. Director Lohr, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mary Michael, is there any other hands raised?
I don't see any more.
Well, I think Director Villalta probably kind of pushed the direction that we're all wanting to go. Are we all in agreement with that?
Well, Las Vegas is.
Director Silvera says yes.
Las Vegas, yes.
I will assume that's the direction that all want to go. Ayes have it. So do you understand that direction, Eric and Stacy?
Yes.
Well, very good. So that concludes item 19. We'll move into other reports. Executive Director's report. Stacy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just be brief. As you can see, we've been really busy, and all of the managers have done a great job in giving you updates on all of the different activities, but I do want to mention a few things. We did release the second Measure V annual report on April 1st. That was our target all along because that was the 3-year anniversary of when the sales tax for Measure V began. And of course, as we were ending March and COVID was changing kind of our work environment and how we were able to approach things, we were really happy to be able to stick to that delivery date despite the added challenges, and we're able to get that posted on our website and distributed. And hard copies of the Measure V annual report will be made available to city halls and the county admin office and places that we want to make sure the public has access to once we're back open to the public. And then if you haven't seen it, or you need a new copy of the link or any other kinds of material that you may want to share on social media, just reach out to me or Mary Michael, and we'd be happy to walk you through that process. I will say, I think, I feel really comfortable and confident that we were able to transition into this kind of hybrid remote working environment over the course of a couple of weeks. And I think, we haven't really seen a real hit to our, scheduling or our productivity timelines or anything like that. The one though, and I say that because the one project that has been impacted and will be for some time most likely is our front office construction project. As you may recall, we are working on getting some security upgrades to the front lobby of the downtown office. And while it would be a perfect time to have construction take place, the materials that are being manufactured and the labor, so it's actually on the contractor's end that they're not able to get what they need. And the last thing they want to do is get us demolished and in the middle of construction and not be able to complete the project. So that project timeline is being impacted. Also, Eric spoke to it briefly, but just want to let you know that we have already implemented a COVID-19 screening and temperature monitoring policy for our on-site workers. That's largely at the 2 landfills and some of our transit techs, and are getting those infrared temperature thermometers and necessary equipment to have and documentation to have in place to protect employees there. And we mentioned the deep cleaning. The only other thing, I was kind of listening to all of our managers' reports and taking notes of what else I wanted to add. And the only other thing I want to add is that you'll be hearing Christine and the rest of the team talk a little bit more about exploring microtransit here. One thing that this COVID situation is giving us the opportunity to recognize that things are just going to be looking differently moving forward, and what are some of the ideas we've been thinking about and exploring that this might be the right time to start really looking at implementation. And so microtransit will be something you'll be hearing about in the coming months. And that's it, unless anyone has questions.
Thank you, Stacy. Are there any questions? Mary Michael, do you have any raised hands?
I do not.
At this time, we'll go ahead and move into Director's Report. Director Creighton?
Nothing.
Director Espinoza?
Nothing.
Director Hoag?
I don't have anything at this time.
Director Lohr?
Nothing, thank you.
Director Murphy?
Just a thank you to our staff for their flexibility during these different times that we're in. So thank you.
Director Oliveira?
Nothing.
Director Pereira?
I concur with Director Hoag.
Director Silvera?
Nothing.
Director Villalta?
Yeah, can we get a more realistic picture of the chair that hasn't been photoshopped from about 20 years ago?
I'll put another one on there.
Other than that, thank you, Stacy. Good organization, Mary Michael, on the meeting, and hope everyone is doing well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Villalta. And on my behalf, I'd like to, same thing as Director Murphy had said, thank you, staff, for working under these conditions. And I'm glad to see how well we're making it work. So at this time, our next meeting will be held on May 21st, 2020 at 3 p.m. via teleconference, webinar, or the City of Livingston, to be determined. That concludes our meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming.